Welcome to Films and Stuff with your hosts, Pete Mitchell and Ethan Hunt.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Films and Stuff podcast. Pete is in the director's chair, and I am Ethan, joining him today. Pete, what's up? How are you?
I am good. How are you?
I'm great. And today it's a patent pending Films and Stuff entertainment ramble because we still have an actors strike. As a result, you and I have not been hitting our usual quotas of cinematic viewings, right?
Kind of depressing, right?
Yeah.
I think it's a combination of a bunch of things, and we'll talk about that. But no movies have come out, but it's an indictment on Hollywood that Taylor Swift's concert movie made almost $100 million.
If you're like me, I feel like we are getting
Too much?
extra doses of Taylor Swift shoved down our throats.
She is currently dating a superstar football player for the Kansas City Chiefs, Travis Kelce. If I have to see one more stupid headline about how she was at another game supporting her boyfriend during this football season, I am going to take my laptop and throw it out the window. What is going on? I couldn't care less.
Why is there no minimum standard for reporting? Almost every other profession has some type of minimum standard of qualification. You and I are not journalists. We're just ramblers offering a humble public service. But why are people who are writing for ESPN and on broadcasts just allowed to talk about whatever they want? I'm opposed to that being the story.
And I know we're going to get a lot of hate from the Swifties for this. But Taylor Swift has a history of basically these celebrity relationships that are super flash in the pan, super hot, and then they end up blowing up, and then she ends up writing a song about it and then making another $100 million off of that name. I'm tired of it, frankly speaking. Okay, we get it. You're going to date this guy. Is she going to write a song about him? Almost guaranteed. Is she going to make another $1 billion off of that? Almost guaranteed. That is why, especially, I couldn't care less about her dating life. We've all seen this before.
How do we get on this ramble? We said it was going to be a ramble. This was a good one. I know how we got on this ramble. We said there's nothing to watch in cinemas. And you said, except the Taylor Swift Eras movie.
Correct.
And I said, that's a concert. Why is it a movie? But it just goes to show there's nothing out in cinemas now.
Let's talk a little bit about streaming platforms. Last week, we gave you our key takeaways and breakdown of the Whip Media survey.
Yep.
So we kind of understood where streaming platforms are standing today. Off the back of that, Netflix had its third quarter investor call. Are you ready for this? Netflix
I'm ready.
Added 8.8 million new subscribers in the last quarter alone.
Whoa. How much is a Netflix subscription? $10 a month?
So that's where it gets spicy. As of this year, started a new ad-supported tier. That one, I think, is only $7 a month. While they increased their subscriber base by 9 million, they took that opportunity to also announce that they were increasing the price of all of their tiers. Because, of course, they were. And if you think about it, $7 a month is incredibly good value, in my opinion, for a platform like Netflix. Disney cost me £7 a month in the UK. As much as I hate ads, I will take Netflix because the variety of content is far better.
So also, just to put that number into perspective, $7 a month for 9 million subscribers is $63 million a month. So for the last quarter, that's $190 million.
On the back of that, we learned two things. One, shares of Netflix jumped 13% on the day they announced their thing, which again, very, very big jump. And what they did release, and I think this is going to segue well into our next major point of this ramble. A majority of the 9 million new subscribers were from outside North America.
Oh, really?
I think that's also because we've seen that the SAG AFTRA strike that's still hitting Hollywood,
Yeah.
it's limited to North American productions.
Mm-hmm.
The actor strike isn't hitting European productions. It isn't hitting Asian productions. It isn't hitting African productions or any other region's productions. So that kind of makes sense to me. And then the last thing I want to say before we jump into the strike is that Netflix also amended its projected budget for 2023. At the beginning of the year, they had anticipated they were spending $17 billion on content creation.
17 billion?
17 for the year.
Whoa.
Almost $1.5 billion a month on content creation. They revised their projections and they think that by the end of the year, it's now only going to be 13 billion. And they're attributing that entirely due to the actors and the writers strike in North America.
Wow.
For everyone who says, well, how big of an effect is this having on the industry? Netflix, quote unquote, saved $4 billion in the last 5 months. That is not insignificant. That's $4 billion less that actors, writers, directors, crew members, set designers, all of these people have had taken away.
Yeah, that's dramatic, huh?
Yeah, it's huge. It's huge. So for those of you who think that, oh, well, what's the big deal? This is just Netflix. Netflix alone has accounted for $4 billion.
Just out of curiosity, let's take Bradley Cooper, for example, right? What do you think Bradley Cooper is doing all day? He can't work, right?
Yeah, but Bradley Cooper is also a prolific writer as well, yeah?
You think he's just working on new material right now?
Even though they're not technically supposed to be doing it, how do you regulate what somebody does in their own private home?
Yeah.
I am almost certain that the busiest of writers and actors and directors spent the strike writing on their project. They either wrote their own new books or maybe they were just working on the next script.
The hard part is you and I have been in situations like this before, I'm sure, where if you know how much time you have off, you can start to say, okay, great, I've got 3 weeks. This is what I'm going to focus on for 3 weeks. When you're not really sure, it kind of makes that time unproductive. You're like, oh man, I had 3 months to do this, but I never knew when that time was going to end. So it's constantly kind of rescheduling or reworking my logistics. If I would have known, I would have had 6 months from the beginning, I would have done this. But instead, when you don't know when the end is, I feel like you spend more time just kind of preparing and planning and replanning. You don't actually get to sit down and be like, okay, chapter 1. What do I want to do here?
Yeah. So let's segue that into the strike.
Yeah.
And a recap, the director's strike was over months ago.
Yeah.
The writer's strike ended officially a couple weeks ago. Both the directors and the writers were very happy with their deals. And I think both the directors and the writers got, from what I understand, very good deals. The SAG AFTRA, i.e. the actor strike, is still ongoing. A lot of people expected it to end relatively quickly after the writer strike because there were so many common pain points between the two. However, spoiler alert, that is not what has happened.
Not much of a spoiler. What is the roadblock?
Apparently, and again, we are not in the negotiating room, so we don't have firsthand knowledge of what's going on here.
Pete, I love that you've had to disclose. Look, in full disclosure, we have not actively participated in those negotiations.
We are not sleeper agents for either the SAG Actors Guild or for the AMPTP.
You said it so seriously, as though you're really making an honest disclosure to our listeners. Guys, we don't want you to have the wrong impression. We're actually not directly involved in those discussions, or indirectly involved. In fact,
Yeah, in fact, we're the least involved people on the planet.
secondhand news.
Our levels of integrity. We were talking about the journalistic standards. We have
Yeah.
more journalistic standards. Okay, we have to be.
I'd say we are actually above compliance with like international reporting best standards, right?
Yeah.
We're making disclosures that no one ever assumed. I don't think anyone's like, oh shit, like I kind of thought that Pete was in those discussions.
Yeah. I also want to disclose I am wearing an Iron Man shirt, if that has any bearing on this, but you should just
on
know.
your allegiances. All right, so we've disclosed we don't have firsthand knowledge of the discussions.
Right, but apparently the Actors Guild asked at like the last minute to increase the contribution from the studios to the actors and their guild, a revenue share of whatever the studios are making. Supposedly, they were saying that it was like 1 or 2% of the gross revenue of each studio or streaming platform. And then they said, okay, now we just want a flat fee from the streamers based on the number of subscribers. So 57 cents per subscriber per year per streaming platform. That doesn't sound like a lot. And I'm not saying it is or it isn't. Again, this is not a criticism one way or another, but it effectively means that it would cost the studios $500 million a year in residuals. In 2022, actors were paid $126 million in residuals. So they're basically asking for a 4x bump, one. And two, they're asking for it to not be linked to performance. They're asking for it to be linked to a flat number of subscribers. What do you think of that?
I don't understand why. I mean, the way that I always kind of thought it worked was that you have whatever you're paid, for the filming. And then whenever the show is sold, it negotiates a percentage of residuals. And then of those residuals, a percentage is paid, to the cast in the pre-agreed percentages. I'm not sure why this isn't up to, the developers of the shows. And if Netflix, for example, is making a new Stranger Things, right? And it says, hey, this is how much we're going to pay you. That's it. It's a one-time payment. You'll get this much per episode or this much per season. That's it. We own it. That may or may not be unfair to the actors, but it's up to them then to kind of like take that deal or not take that deal, right? There's a buyer and there's workers. I don't see that that's unfair. When there's other shows being, made, like whether they're independent or through a studio, then like sitcoms, for example, are a little bit notorious for always having residuals because then, of course, they're going to be syndicated and on-sold. I'm really not sure why this is such an issue with the streaming platforms.
This is such a cop-out answer, but I think it's just that's kind of the way the industry has always been. I agree with you because it's akin to me paying a contractor to build my house. And then when I sell that house, the contractor also taking a percentage of what I sell that house for in the future.
Yeah.
That doesn't make sense to me either.
I would say in this type of entertainment environment, which I think is characterized much more than 10 and certainly 20 years ago, the development of new content is very, very fast. The cycle is rapid. And in the past, you would have, let's take a show like Friends. Friends for 10 seasons had a new season, right? But then you would watch syndicated episodes late night on like secondary channels, right? Or you would buy the DVDs. That's really not the case. Like Stranger Things is, I think, an exception. Even like Game of Thrones. Who is going back and watching Game of Thrones, honestly? I'd like to see the numbers and who is going back on HBO and watching season 1 of Game of Thrones. I would expect that those residuals are very, very low. Even like House of the Dragon. Okay, fine, House of the Dragon. There's going to be a new season. Maybe some people will go back and watch the original, but I really don't think anyone is going back to watch the original Games of Thrones. Those are great shows. They had their time, and people are moving on. There's so much new content coming out. I don't think people have the bandwidth to go back and look at older content anymore.
I would agree with you on maybe more dramatic, on shows that are much more like seasonal in the sense that the arcs are over many, many seasons.
Yeah.
But for example, I mean, look at Suits. It's been off the air for how long, but it is currently on Netflix the highest rated or most streamed show. Friends is consistently the same.
Yeah.
I think it's because there's also an element of those shows are much more episodic without an overarching narrative. So you could watch any series of Friends in any order you'd like. And of course, there are some overarching narratives, like someone's had a baby or someone's married or whatever.
Yeah.
But each episode stands alone as well. Like you can just watch it and be like, haha, that's funny. Okay, I'll move on to the next one.
Yeah. Those are definitely outliers. But generally, apart from those, Office and Friends are among the most popular shows ever, history-wise.
Yeah, you're right.
You know, Suits is actually not, even though I've got a soft place in my heart for Suits, I would also argue a lot of Suits is because Meghan Markle, and there's been a little bit of a revival due to her role. But apart from that, I mean, is anyone going back and watching like Umbrella Academy season 1? Okay, I'm sure people are, but generally, I think there's so much new content out there. I mean, we've got our streamer skip segment. There's so much new content out there that I think it's really hard to go back and watch old stuff.
Yeah, and to your point, it's not just new content that was made in 2023. They're adding content that you may not have seen from 10 years ago, especially for us abroad and outside of North America, who maybe didn't have the opportunity to watch something that was previously on cable TV or like on NBC or ABC only. Yeah. And all of a sudden now it's on Netflix globally. We can see it anywhere.
Yeah. But irrespective of this does not seem like a philosophical debate. A philosophical debate is, can we use computer-generated characters? That's like a substantive debate. When you're arguing about royalties, every side has their perspective. Every side has some evidence that backs them up. That's a financial negotiation. Meet in the middle. No one's going to walk away from that discussion being like, yes, we got the 57 cents we were asking for. And no one's going to walk away saying, yes, we got them to drop that demand entirely. There's going to be a negotiation, whether they end up 26, 28, or they end up at 19 or 31. That's a negotiation. And I'm sure it's not going to be so simple. It'll be like, fine, we'll start at 20, we'll go up to 23, then in 5 years, we'll go up to 29, right? Like, find a way to like stagger it and meet in the middle. There's really no reason that this should be broken off negotiations, I feel.
Thank you for bringing us back to the point. That is absolutely correct. It's a sign of bad faith from the studios for them to completely break off. You're already paying the equivalent of 12 or 13 cents in residuals per subscriber. They're now asking for 57. Maybe that number is too high for you. That's fine. But if you're already paying 12 or 13 cents, you've got a floor. It's just a matter of sitting down at the table and saying, well, guys, you know, it's hard for us to go up 4 times. Let's go up 1 time. Let's go up 2 times. Let's go up 1.5 times, and let's build it up. That, I think, is exactly the right attitude. I'm a bit surprised that the studios were just like, no, we're done. We're walking away. I think that's a bit A, short-sighted, and I think B, also a bit childish and petty. That was the sticking point on the strike from the studio side. Mm-hmm. There have been a couple other developments. The major development, which I think most people may have heard of, is that a bunch of A-list superstars got together and said that, hey, you know what? We want to help out for this strike. We want to help the other actors. We are willing to eliminate the cap on our SAG dues, and that will theoretically generate an additional $50 million a year for the next 3 years. The way SAG's rules are, if you are a member of the guild, you have to pay like $280 or $290 a year as your base fee, as your dues, and 1.575, let's call it 1.6% of all your earnings during the year, capped to $1 million.
Okay.
And a bunch of these A-list superstars, and this is like a really small number, have said that we're willing to waive that cap.
Okay.
So George Clooney and I think Emma Stone, and there was a whole list of actors who said that we'll eliminate that cap so that instead of just us giving $1 million, because again, remember, 1.6%, $1 million means that you're making like $80 million a year, $90 million a year. There are not many actors who are doing that. By eliminating that cap, which can then be used towards health insurance and for supporting the other members and so forth.
I don't know.
So there were two ways to look at this argument. That will help strengthen SAG position at the negotiating table because then SAG is less stressed about finances.
Yeah.
But the flip side of that coin is that it also could potentially be seen as a bunch of A-list actors undermining the SAG leadership so that the actors feel pressure to accept the AMPTP deal because it looks like the A-listers are also getting a little antsy and restless and want to get back to work.
I'm not sure about this number. I know you weren't directly involved in negotiations, so I'm sure you're taking this from another source. But okay, if it's capped at $1 million and that's 1.6%, you have to make more than $80 million a year to go above that cap.
Whatever that number is, yeah.
Okay. Realistically, though, is Tom Cruise making more than $80 million a year?
So someone like Tom Cruise probably breached that last year because he probably has points on the movies, right? It's not just the salary that he's making for Top Gun. He's also taking a percentage.
I'm not doubting your numbers, but I feel like that is maybe more symbolic by the A-list. Because even if you make 100 million, 1.6% is 600,000, right? $100 million is a huge amount of money to make every year. It's hard to believe that they make that every year. Tom Cruise may make it in 1 year or maybe every other year. But even if you go that route and he makes 100 million, 1.6% is 1.6 million. His cap was 1 million. That's 600,000. How many 100 million actors are out there? I'll give you 10. I'd even be shocked if you said that last year, 10 actors made $100 million. 50 million, I'll give you 20 people made 50 million. 100 million, I'd say 2. There's not 10 movies a year that are making $1 billion. I mean, we did our summer blockbuster, like 4 made $1 billion, 3. I believe that that's a legitimate thing by the A-listers, but I also believe that that's a little bit symbolic. And it's like, oh, look, we're willing to suffer with our fellow actors who are making $13,000 an episode, but it really doesn't impact a dramatic amount of folks. I would love to be a part of that group. Disclaimer, I'm not. But I would love to be a part of that group and be like, hey, you know what? I agree. I'll waive my cap. And they're like, you're not even in any films right now. Yeah, I'm just saying in the future, I'm happy to waive that cap.
Yeah.
I think you have more people saying I want to be part of the group that's going to waive the cap than people that are actually subject to the cap.
Yeah, you're right. The math.
Yeah, if it was like 5% fees, but capped at $1 million, and then someone who's making like 100 million, you're like, that's a 4 million difference. That's a real difference, you know?
Yeah. The back of the napkin numbers don't maybe necessarily make sense, but I don't know where that $50 million extra a year is coming from.
Yeah.
In any case, the whole point of that was whether it's symbolic or not symbolic, whether it's meant to strengthen their argument or potentially undermine their argument.
People are getting
antsy. Not just the fans of movies, but the actors themselves.
What's your sense of Fran Drescher as the president?
Apparently very good. She, in the middle of the strike, she was reelected with over 80% voting for her. The overwhelming majority has said that she has been a fierce defender of all actors. And it's kind of nice to see because, you know, even though we haven't seen a lot of her, Fran Drescher made a lot of money through The Nanny, which was also a very successful sitcom, which was also syndicated. I'm quite positive she's not struggling for money.
Mm.
But to see her fight tooth and nail for her fellow actors like this,
Mm.
I'm a big fan. So that's the current status. I'm not pro SAG. I'm not anti SAG. I'm not pro studio. I'm not anti studio. But the last comment I will make is your average person on the street who doesn't know these details probably is just
Yep.
like, well, I can't believe a bunch of Hollywood liberal elites are fighting for extra money. They're already well overpaid. The second thing is that SAG hasn't helped themselves. They've kind of shot themselves in the foot. Just a couple days ago, they released a public directive to all members of SAG that they're asking all SAG union members to not dress up for Halloween as characters or fictional characters from struck projects. I get the principle of what you're saying, but come on. That's a bit ridiculous. Even Ryan Reynolds made a joke about that at SAG's expense. He's like, yeah, I'm looking forward to yelling scab at my 8-year-old who's not a member of the union, but she has to learn that sometime. In such an important time, also in a time where there's a lot more going on globally, that's a little bit more important than what's going on in Hollywood. You're now going out of your way to say, don't dress up as your favorite characters for Halloween.
I didn't even know that was a risk.
That's such a petty thing to do for actors, for anyone. Like,
Dress up like a hot dog, never goes out of style, or a pumpkin. Who has really the balance of power in this? Because someone has to, I don't want to say cave, but who do you think has more pressure on them to get the deal done?
So right now it's 50-50, I think.
Yeah.
Earlier in the strike, I would have said it was the studios.
Mm-hmm.
But the studios are hurting, right? They're losing money. And Deadpool 3 was supposed to be the first movie of the summer blockbuster releases of 2024, has just been moved off of the schedule indefinitely. That is not a small thing.
Let me give you this hot take and you tell me if this is correct. I think negotiating wise, the studios have a stronger position because they can probably weather the storm and they have still some ways to make revenue and to cut costs, whereas actors have a limited shelf life and they probably need to get to work faster. In the long term, actors, without any name, but just as a pool of employees, have probably more resiliency to bounce back and be fine, whereas so much time is going to take place between episodes of films that they're actually going to undermine their own product by saying, hey, remember Dune 1? Dune 2 is coming out. And everyone's like, nah, I'm not interested in that anymore. Like, I was interested 2 years ago. I've totally forgotten about Dune 1. I'm going to pass. Fast and the Furious 11 or whatever it is. Nah, I've lost the plot. Not interested in seeing it. I think it's hurting studios in the long term because they're going to have to go out of their way to get people re-interested in things that they've totally forgotten about for a long time. Whereas actors are a never-ending cycle, right? There's always a new A-list. There's always someone who's going to transition from TikTok or being a comedian or something. Actors will bounce back as a group, although individual actors may be hurt.
I agree. That's going to hurt studios like Disney in particular, which has, especially as of late, has been focused only on franchise
IP
movies.
related. Yeah.
But I do agree with the first point you made for sure, which is, at least in the short term, corporate America is very resilient, especially when it comes to labor matters.
Yeah.
And generally speaking, even though it's not popular with the general public, the share market will reward a studio that sticks fast to screwing over its employees in America.
Yeah. I would say almost everywhere. And this applies to the automobile industry, lawyers, financial services, actors. There is no one, for better or for worse, in this world who is irreplaceable. Presidents of countries come and go. Ministers of finance come and go.
Yeah.
Heads of companies come and go. There are people who are better or worse at those jobs than other people, but generally no one is irreplaceable. Also in the US, like an auto workers strike, right?
Yeah,
At
exactly.
General Motors and at Ford, those folks who are working like on assembly lines or in factories are unfortunately probably more replaceable than the heads of those companies. But also those heads of those companies can be replaced. I can't even tell you who the CEO of Ford is, or for General Motors, or for E0224, or for something else. All those people can be replaced. So I think, yes, generally the organization is in a stronger position. And oftentimes strikes, I think, are better if you can negotiate a quick deal to get some of the things you want and at least ongoing stability and continuity, rather than asking for the world, knowing you're not going to get it and potentially harming yourselves longer term. Amazon, fast food restaurants, they're going to be great test cases. More and more of those positions are going to be automated.
Yeah.
And it's kind of inevitable. And I think that the longer the actors' strike goes on, the more studios are going to think, how can we minimize this risk in the future?
Yes.
Let's make sure that now we do more AI generated content. At some point, bound to happen that there's going to be more animated films, more AI generated characters. And it's kind of only a matter of time until you see like a human aging, moody, potentially criminal allegations against actor being phased out because there's too much risk in having a human fill the role where AI generated content could do just as good of a job, right?
Mm-hmm. Pardon my language, but it's still a real shit show in Hollywood for the actors.
Yeah.
As a fan of movies, as someone who desperately wants to get back into the cinema to watch a good movie, I'm hopeful that they can kind of pull their thumbs out and get on with it.
Tell me what you think of the idea that there is a documentary made about this.
No chance. There's no way any actor or any studio will want to risk their careers over something like this.
How wonderful would that be if that was released now and that became like the
You
Taylor
and
Swift
I
eras?
could probably do it because as we
are not
so
directly involved.
We are not a part of this industry.
Don't you think it would be ironic if there was a documentary about the strike itself and that became like the most watched piece of new entertainment that came out?
And here's the kicker. Who would the residuals go to?
That would be caught up in an unending web of litigation.
It would be a circular problem, right?
Do studios have like international offices though? Not offices, it's like branches, right? Like Warner must have like a UK operation, and those UK operations are still pumping out content, right?
Well, yes. Theoretically, they were supposed to have been. So House of the Dragon, mostly filmed in Europe, that was supposed to have continued, as was Andor. That was supposed to have continued. So there's quite a few like that. And of course, all the production of Netflix that's overseas has continued and will continue.
I say this with respect to every country, but oftentimes you see the difference between a US produced piece of film or television and a foreign produced piece. And it's hard to put your finger on it, but it's dramatically different. Like I notice it with like Arab television. Some of those stories are so choppy and kind of poorly put together that you really wonder what is the professionalism of the teams that are doing these things. Not even calling into question someone's competence, but just kind of like, guys, do you even care? Like, this isn't about like, are you at the top of your trade craft? And I'm criticizing your level of competence. I'm criticizing your level of commitment, where I'm saying, is this okay? Like, you're comfortable at this level of quality or plot gap or nonsensical settings and things like this. You know, it drives me bonkers with Arabic television, particularly. And it's not a matter of budget. You see, like, they spend so much money on like these lavish houses to show like a wealthy family.
Yeah.
The amount of cars that they must rent, all these Range Rovers and Mercedes cars, the wardrobe and the costume jewelry that some of the women wear. But then you'll see like these scenes and like someone's in an office and it's like, that doesn't even look like an office. That looks like someone's like home bedroom office. How can you even pretend like this guy is like the head of like this empire company when he's like sitting, rotating between like these two little walls, this tiny little desk, and it's got like a business card holder on it. Like it doesn't even seem legitimate. You've never seen like an office of a proper professional before. It drives me nuts. US production is like second to none, right?
Having said that, it's also always a pleasant surprise when we do see foreign productions that are equally good, if not better. Vortex blew me away because the production quality was equally good to, what we would see coming out of the West.
Yeah, Vortex was pretty good. All right, so that's our films and stuff weekly ramble focused on a variety of things.
Just as an aside, the only notable release that's coming out, and it's not even one that I recommend you watch in the cinema, I haven't seen it yet, is Killers of the Flower Moon, Martin Scorsese's latest 3.5 hour epic. And yes, you heard me right. The movie is 3.5 hours long.
Oh my
Unless
God.
you live in Turkey or in India or in a country that has an intermission, I would suggest do your bladder a favor and watch it at home when it hits streaming on Apple.
Oh, I don't know why. If you and I were part of the negotiations, which once again, we are not, but if we were, I don't understand why they don't mandate there to be a 10-minute intermission, which is just a moneymaker for everybody, especially since the trend for films has been longer and longer.
They will sell so many more snacks.
Can I also say, and you and I are spoiled by where we live, the US snack game is surprisingly weak at cinemas.
Oh, yeah.
Do you agree?
On paper, it always looks good, but it does not hold a candle to the rest of the world.
No. I mean, I would say so much so that people probably do not even know what they're missing.
Yeah.
In the Emirates, and I think the Emirates is a step behind India probably, like the high-level cinemas there, but the crap that you get, I think, in US cinemas is appalling. And it's not because people, I think, are unwilling to pay. I think if you would offer dramatically more and better choices, you would sell dramatically and more amounts of
the candy
snacks.
Game, great.
Yeah.
Popcorn, great. But that's it. You're kind of limited to that. You might get like a stale hot dog.
Nachos.
You might get some terrible nachos with some even worse, like fake cheese sauce.
Yeah.
But that's kind of it. If you're at a fancy place, you might be able to buy a beer or a martini or some kind of alcoholic beverage.
Yeah.
But that's kind of like the upper bounds as to what you're getting in the cinemas in the US.
At the minimum, there should be like a fry game or a chicken tenders. Maybe not burgers. Burgers, I think, can be a little bit complicated, but there should absolutely be some type of like loaded fries or
sliders.
Something like that.
My local cinema, just to give an example, it has a dumpling counter, it has samosas, fries, it has chicken nuggets, it has chicken tenders, obviously popcorn, candy, nachos, pizza.
Yeah, why is there not more pizza?
And that's the smaller cinema. The bigger cinema, I mean, they've got even more, and it's fantastic because every seat comes with a tray. They bring you the food, so you don't need to worry about fumbling around in the dark. They serve it to you. It's very good.
You have to promise you'll come to my good cinema in Dubai for Dune whenever it comes out.
Yeah, I can't wait.
That cinema on the balcony row is the finest cinematic in terms of comfort, in terms of view, in terms of dining experience worldwide. That includes Zimbabwe.
Does this beat white wine out of a paper cup?
Not by much, but it does.
Okay.
Pete, if people want to give us their thoughts, feelings, anonymous experiences participating in the negotiations.
Yeah, tell us. We know.
We'll definitely make sure that we attribute it anonymously because we're not involved.
Tweet at us at F&S Podcast. DM us on Instagram at Films and Stuff Podcast. Email us aloha at filmsandstuffpodcast.com. But as always, like this video, leave a comment below about those negotiations, subscribe to our channel, and hit that notification bell so that when the next episode of the Films and Stuff Podcast drops, you'll be the first to know.
Pete, great episode. Thank you for your time and contributions. Listeners, thanks for tuning in. We'll see you on the next episode of the Films and Stuff Podcast. Bye, everyone.
Thanks, Ethan. Bye.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Films and Stuff. If you haven't already, please subscribe and review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever podcasts are downloaded. Films and Stuff. There is no substitute.